Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Talk of the Trinity podcast. Just when you thought you would never see me and my co-host, Mr. Trinity himself, Will Forrest, back in the same room, we are here together. If you're watching on YouTube, you got the viewing pleasure right in front of your very eyes right now. If you're listening, you've have to take my word for it at the moment that you will be hearing the dulcet tones of both me, Baz Barrett, and Will Forrest during the course of this podcast. But one thing which you have always been united with is our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, which has been keeping you up to date with all of the latest Villa news, rumours, insights. We've been throwing a poll or two your way. No doubt there'll be a poll on there right now. You can multitask. Don't let anybody tell you that it's only one gender who can multitask. You can do it. Get on our Twitter page and continue listening or watching this podcast at the same time. You can, of course, always listen to our podcast audioly. Is that a word? It is now. What is also a word? Amazon, Apple, Spotify, Google, where you can find our audio versions. And we are also on FanHub as well. But you may have been thinking, it's been a while since you've been together. What is it that tempted you back to be together in the virtual same room at the same time? Of course, there was only one man who would be able to tempt my co-host back into the virtual room, Danny Ings, and he was there at Upton, well, used to be Upton Park, the London Stadium now, on Sunday just gone, when Villa went to town. West Ham won, Villa won, full-time score. Danny Ings didn't score, which, mixed emotions there for you, Will. But apart from that, what were your thoughts on the game and the result?
I thought Danny obviously showed us that he still loves the club, by not scoring against us and by not having the greatest of performances. So fair play, Danny. Once a claret and blue, always a claret and blue, all the time. Mate, you support all the London teams. I swear.
Well,
You're going to be a Brentford fan next week.
It will be if they carry on winning. It might be a chance to go watch some European football.
It was one of those, wasn't it, where I'll be honest with you. I watched the highlights on the Premier League highlights show because another show wasn't on in full force. Glad that's back this weekend. It seemed to be mainly West Ham, didn't it? Ben Rama came alive against us, which he always does, scored a cracking penalty. Was it a penalty? Yeah, it was. Leon Bailey, you plonker. After Ollie Watkins had scored a fantastic header down one end, cleared an effort off the line with a fantastic header at the other end. And Bailey was just like, do you know what, lads? Hold my drink.
Yeah.
I'm going to sort this out for West Ham. Could we have had a penalty of our own? It's debatable. The tackle on Buendia, was it enough to give a penalty? We've seen them given. I mean, Bournemouth last weekend might have been too happy about the penalty against Adam Smith when they played Liverpool. I'm sure we'll get onto that in a little while. All in all, I said in the preview, which you wouldn't have listened to, that I'd have taken a draw. I was happy with a 2-2, especially going to a bogey ground against a bogey team. The last time we did anything against them was that 1-1 draw that kept us up, wasn't it, when Super Jack was wearing claret and blue as well? So 1-1's fine for me. I think it keeps momentum going. We had 60-odd% possession. Alex Moreno with that fantastic assist for the goal, and Ollie Watkins continues to score the goals that we've needed him to now that he's our only real striker.
Yeah, and in a reciprocal assumption that you didn't listen to my prediction for the West Ham game, I predicted 1-1. So in terms of, I think it was in the waters that a draw was potentially going to be a likely result. I mean, I think in terms of summing up whether a draw was a fair result, whenever you've got the manager coming out after the game and saying, yeah, I think the draw was the fair result, usually in terms of even if you've looked at the ball. There's we deserve to win, kind of we were comfortably the better team. But I think in terms of Emre's comments after the game, I think he thought we were better in the first half. Then the second half, West Ham got booed off, I think, at full time, even with a point. For, as you say, for us, it keeps momentum going.
Yep.
After a run of 3 defeats in a row, now unbeaten in three. So, in terms of tide can turn relatively quickly. But I think in terms of we've talked previously about how away from home we appear to be well set under Emre, kind of defensively in particular, kind of a good solid shape system players appear to be comfortable with now and trust the system, which I think is important. Because I think in terms of under previous managers, I think we probably would have lost that game.
Yeah.
I think so. As you say, positives you got to take from it. Ollie Watkins, recent interviews, kind of articles I've seen in terms of the amount of work that he's been doing on the training field, going back last summer as well, to be fair. So not just a recent thing, but it's good to see that it's paying off because in terms of, as you said, we have constantly. I'm trying to think of it. I don't think. Well, we wanted him to score more goals. Basically, you could say criticise. I wanted to get away kind of from a word like that, but I think there was beginning to be a feeling of.
You called him Wally Hopkins. That's the biggest criticism that he could have had at all.
I mean, I'd like to think that when I heard somebody else down Villa Park start saying Wally Hopkins, that was the inspiration that is needed. But I think there was, I'll be honest, there was a feeling in the back of the mind thinking, he's a 10 goal a season man. Really, that's going to, on a great season, you might, as in the first season, and for example, when he joined Villa in the Premier League, I think it was 14, 15, and you'd be like, yeah, that's an exceptional season. But the recent games, the recent goal scoring record and assists as well, mean that personally, you got to begin to reevaluate. Can he be a 15 as like the minimum, going up to that 20, and all the right outcomes on the pitch are happening so far, and you'd like to think that a summer of, well, we'll give him a few weeks off, but once pre-season training begins back in full force, that he's only going to get better with Emre because, one of the things that all the players seem to be pretty unanimous on with Emre in his regime is the attention to detail in terms of the analysis, the training, what asked to do is so full on in a good way that you think he would only get better.
Yeah, definitely. You certainly hope he does. And I was reading something. I'm sure it said that he'd be the first player in a very long time to get double figures 3 seasons on the trot for us. He obviously equaled that Dwight York away goal scoring run at the weekend as well. He's definitely stepped up, and the system obviously suits him. And it goes to potentially show that he is better suited to having 2 10s in that team because that's effectively what we're playing with. And then he's playing up front with Leon Bailey, and without jumping on the Bailey bandwagon of, oh my God, he's useless. Oh my God, he's brilliant 1 week, useless the next. I can't quite put my finger on the position that he plays for us. Is he a championship manager right forward, right out on that forward position, not a winger, not a striker, just sort of there, if you know what I mean, and Watkins is here and there's no one over here. It's a bit weird, but who knows? Maybe when Booba comes back, we'll see somebody else up front with Watkins again because Buendia was doing very well with him. They've got some nice link-up play. But no, he's doing very, very well. And no longer are we saying, where's Wally? We're going, Ollie, 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 goal, goal, goal.
I mean, I'd say in terms of Watkins, as you mentioned, the system helps him because home or away, he's been asked to do the same things, really. I'd say for Watkins. Bailey, I'd say the assignment does appear to vary depending on whether we're home or away, who we're playing. So sometimes he is kind of that second forward. Sometimes you see him drifting on the wing. I think you could partly, I'd say that's because he is a bit of a free spirit, if you can call it that. But I do think just because of the attention to detail Emery has, I think partly it is in terms of being asked to do different roles. So that does perhaps lead to a little inconsistency. I'd still say in terms of, despite Watkins' good form of late and long may it continue, I wouldn't let that distract from what we were talking about in January in respect of getting another striker in summer, because only one injury or one bad run of form away or one stupid offer from another team looking in your way, Chelsea, which you may wish to take. So I do think we need that backup. Bailey, I think, yeah, I don't think we can say much more than what we had before in terms of on his day looks unplayable. When it's not his day, sometimes looks like he's never played. But that's just I think in terms of it's the debate. Do you want somebody who 1 week of 9, the other week of 5, or do you want that 6 and 7 every week? And I think as time goes on, and I think as Villa go higher up the league, hopefully in terms of if next season we are in that European qualification hunt, I do hear you saying we're in that qualification hunt this season. No, we're not. Negative Baz is saying we are not qualifying for Europe this season. I don't think that's necessarily because we're bad, but I've already mentioned my boys, Brentford. I got more boys. I got all the boys. Brentford, Brighton. So many teams I support. They look really good, I think, in terms of consistent runs of form. So I don't think it's going to be because we're terrible. I just think in terms of too far to run. But, in terms of as long as we're doing our thing in terms of a consistent finish to the season, then regardless of where we finish in the league table, the foundations will be looking good for next season. And, in terms of, they say what a difference a day makes or a week makes, what a difference a place makes. Just briefly touching upon, we played Palace a couple of weeks ago, whereby they were only one place below us in the league. They've sacked their manager, Patrick Vieira, this morning. Well, you can probably guess when we're recording by that. But yeah, I mean, we're always quite positive in respect of how well Palace were doing and the team they're building. But it just shows, how quickly things could change in football.
Oh, definitely. I think they're starting to fall away a little bit, though, haven't they?
Yep.
This calendar year, unfortunately for them, they're a decent. He played some really nice attacking playing football last year. Losing Conor Gallagher would have had an impact, but you felt that they still had the players and the signings to push on there. I think that the sacking of Vieira or the leaving of Vieira, I'm not sure how that's gone about, puts a lot of pressure on Gary O'Neill this weekend.
Yep.
Because Palace are going to be going and looking for the best available manager that they can get that's out there. I don't know who that is for them. I hope they don't get Jesse Marsh. I hope nobody ever gets Jesse Marsh again. You'd rather have Jesse James, and he must be 6 feet under from a long, long time ago from a gunshot wound. I think, though, Bournemouth will be thinking that if they lose to us at the weekend, they might need to have a rethink of their manager, because just look at the impact that Sean Dyche has had at Everton already. Yeah, they might not be exactly where they want to be, but they're definitely showing that they can get wins.
Yep. Shows how
Forest are starting to come good as well.
Shows how tight it is in terms of Palace are 12th at the moment, Villa 11th. The gap between Palace in 12th at time recording and Bournemouth in 18th is
6 points.
3 points.
3? Bloody hell.
At time recording before the weekend fixtures. I mean, and we're 8 points ahead of Palace, so I think we're comfortably out of it. But yeah, that bottom that bottom nine, I think I'm glad that we are in the foyer of the cinema, getting our popcorn, our drinks, getting ready to watch that show unfold, and we're not a part of it. But speaking of things that Villa are also not a part of, just briefly touch upon the England squad, which was announced for the upcoming European qualification games against Italy and Ukraine. So we've been talking on the show about Watkins being in a good run of form, talk about whether he was going to be rewarded with a call-up. He was not. With the in-out being Wilson, Callum Wilson went to the World Cup. He's out of the squad. And Ivan Toney in to the squad. He wasn't called up to the World Cup for what we are legally only obliged to refer to as reasons. So in terms of the England squad, also I mentioned Watkins not in the squad. Any other players who you think, aside from Watkins, could potentially be feeling a little miffed? And if you were the proverbial England manager, would you, when you had to write your players' names on that piece of paper, would any of them have made your squad list?
Oh yeah, of course. They would have. We mentioned it before we came on air. I'd have put Tyrone Mings in there. I think Tyrone's had a fantastic season. He's had adversity. He's come back from it. He's shown how valuable he is to us. Just a couple of weeks ago, he wasn't in the match day squad, and it showed because of injury or illness. I think he plays an integral part for us. Okay, he's not on the level of some of the England centre backs that there are. For me, John Stones is probably the best England centre back that there is at the moment. You've got Tamori as well at AC Milan, who's done very well over there. Mark Guéhi has been doing okay, but Palace have been struggling quite a bit recently. I think Mikel Arteta was a bit perplexed that Ben White didn't get a call up. Don't know why. Ben obviously
Trent.
hasn't. Yeah, Ben obviously hasn't told him everything that went on at the World Cup. And Trent, well, he shouldn't be. I feel for him. There's a lot of scrutiny around him at the moment, but he's not performing as a defender should. But is Virgil van Dijk? I'd have liked to have seen Mings in there. I think Ollie Watkins can feel upset, but when you look at the other attackers who are in there, Sterling isn't in, is he?
No, I think they're saying he's injured.
Okay, yeah, injured. I think when you look at all the other attacking options that there are, then you can understand why Watkins didn't get in. Rashford's having an amazing season. Saka has been phenomenal. Toney is third top goal involvements in the Premier League this season. He plays for your Brentford. I mean, you'd know more about it than me. Harry Kane's got 1 in 7, but it's Harry Kane. You can understand him being in the squad again. Mings is the only one. Mings is the only one for me. But we've got a lot of players elsewhere, haven't we? Archer and JJ have been called up to the under-21s. AJ and Tim are in the under-20s. You've got Buendia and Martinez in the Argentina squad. John Duran has been called up to the full men's Colombia team as well. Mate Cash is in the Poland team. The only other player who must be kicking themselves a little bit at the moment, and you'll scoff at this, but he recently lost his place in the Villa team, had been playing very well. As we've just pointed out there are problems at right back for England. Ashley Young, I don't think he would have got in, but no. If he'd been playing well enough, I'd have taken him.
No. I mean, I think in terms of, he's been an able step in for Villa this season when he's needed to. But in terms of for an England team building towards the next major tournament and tournaments, would you
Mate, they want young players.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, that's the memo. I mean, I think. Well,
and he's a right back.
I'm going to say, the way Southgate's been interpreting squad selection, maybe he's got more of a shot. But I'd say in terms of
he's a young right back.
Well, yeah, exactly.
He literally fits the bill.
But no, I mean, I think in terms of you mentioned some of the right backs who aren't in the squad. No, I wouldn't put Young ahead of any of them, in all honesty. In terms of Watkins, as you mentioned, other strikers also having great seasons. We mentioned when we were talking about West Ham, the Villa system is set around Watkins, that one up front with the support from the number 10s. England play, Kane is the man up front with support. You might say number 10s, might say slightly wider players, but in terms of a system where there's one man up front, and in terms of England are not going to drop Harry Kane. Uh, it could come what may, and then, as you say, young they are, as in age, young players around him. What kind of Rashford, Saka, Phil Foden, players like that. I mean,
Yeah,
you can make a point of him being in the squad, but I think in terms of that Tony position in the England squad, it's really who's going to be maybe third choice striker who might get on for 10 minutes. And you can make arguments for Tony and Watkins. I think Tony's probably been slightly more consistent over the course of the season. I mean, we'll leave others to say who's great, but in terms
it's
of,
it's it's names in a bowl. It's
you know,
names in a bowl, really,
you know,
isn't it? Because it's always someone different. Ivan Toney deserves it at the moment. Callum Wilson and Ivan Toney deserved it going into the World Cup. Obviously, Tony's not selected for whatever reasons the FA chose. I think it's very much names in a bowl.
yeah, it may be in terms of next season, depending on what happens with various charges that have been brought. What Watkins, if he's still in form, steps up there. I mean, I'd say in terms of Tyrone Mings, as touched upon previously, his importance to Villa currently, I don't think could be disputed very much. But in terms of the fine margins of international football, I mean, in terms of the quarter final of the World Cup against France, England played very well, but it was just two slight moments where the French attacking players were better than our defensive players. Not terrible mistakes, but just slight position, slight wrong side. The margin for error is just so small at international level. And Mings is inconsistent. He has a clanger in him at Premier League level. So you can see why perhaps not called up at this stage. I mean, in terms of the other centre backs, again, you could have an argument. He could be third, fourth choice centre back. I mean, who else is in the squad? Eric Dyer. I mean, he's solid enough for Spurs. Made his way back into the reckoning, as it were. Most people, would they care too much if Mings was in ahead of Dyer? Probably not. I wouldn't have thought. I wouldn't have thought there'd be an outcry. I mean, if that happened, but I mean, the best way for all England prospects at Villa to work their way into that squad is to carry on winning games, and
To leave.
or to leave.
Sorry.
But we will never leave you, and we're going to carry on talking about the next game where Villa players can make that positive impression as Bournemouth come to town on Saturday afternoon, 3 p.m. Villa Park. We've touched upon Bournemouth already in passing a couple of times in the podcast so far today. Currently 18th in the league, 3 points off 11th, so 3 points off 12th, I should say. So showing how condensed it is down there. Coming off the back of a 1-0 win over Liverpool last Saturday, which I don't know whether that says more about Liverpool than it does about Bournemouth, but you can't scoff at that win for Bournemouth. But apart from the fact that I believe, from recollection, and a teaser for an episode that will be upcoming during the international break, hopefully, where we look back at our pre-season predictions and have a go at working our way through the quagmire that is the relegation battle for the rest of the season.
Giggly.
I think both of us thought, I did. I thought Bournemouth would get relegated. So for them still to be in the hunt, fair play to them. But what are your thoughts about this Bournemouth team? And you mentioned the manager previously. Well, what are your thoughts on the whole Bournemouth setup?
I'm sure that I put Bournemouth to come 14th this season, but I did put Dominic Solanke to get like 10 goals or so. I'm not sure what number he's on. He's not Mitrovic levels
Yep.
just yet at the
No,
moment.
not quite.
Uh, I thought Bournemouth started quite well, and then obviously they set the manager. Gary O'Neill came in, and they were looking good when he was the interim manager. But as soon as he became permanent, it they started that downward slide. I think he's been a bit lucky not to have lost his job. To be honest with you, Bournemouth are obviously being very patient with him. They know he's a young manager. They know he loves the club. They know that he understands the club, and they're giving him a transfer window. And whilst things didn't immediately turn around for them, they've shown signs of improvement. I mean, what was he? Seconds against Arsenal, and they were 1-0 up, went 2-0 up against them then, and only lost in the 97th minute to that Nelson goal. And then, of course, beating Liverpool. And against Liverpool, Liverpool didn't have it all their own way. I know they created chances and they missed the worst penalty, I think, probably ever in Premier League history, apart from Adamola Lookman a couple of years ago against West Ham. But Bournemouth, they were nice and resolute against Liverpool. They defended well. But they also showed they've got that attacking flair through Billing, through Ottawa. I think I'm pronouncing his name right, through Anthony as well. They've got Solanke, who's a powerhouse up front. David Brooks, of course, it's great to see him back after his cancer treatment. Do I think that Bournemouth could stay up? I think that the answer is yes, because of the inconsistencies of all the other teams
Yep.
around them. There will be, I would imagine, a shock relegation this year. And the reason I say that is because of those teams that are in the bottom nine, and hoping that we're not going to get dragged into a battle, I don't think we will. But of those teams that are in the bottom nine, there were probably only two that at the start of the season you'd have put your houses on going down, and that would be Forest and Bournemouth. They wouldn't be shocked, which obviously means that there is one space that will be a shock.
I did have Forest comfortably staying up, I think, for
I remember
recollection.
you did.
Yeah.
I had them bottom.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of, you say, I think that big win against Liverpool, their recent results had really been in terms of expected. I mean, in terms of, you mentioned they lost to Arsenal, although the circumstances were slightly unusual before the game. You might have probably expected Arsenal to win. They lost at home to Man City, expected. They won away at Wolves, very good result. Drew to Newcastle, lost away to Brighton, lost away to Brentford. You'd perhaps expect. Drew at home to Forest. So
you would,
yeah. So they're kind of they're there or thereabouts. And as you mentioned, in terms of they spent money in January, I think in terms of they bought players who they're investing for the medium long term future of the club, not necessarily for the manager, if that makes sense.
yeah.
They haven't gone Pacific in that sense, but yeah, they're a team in terms of defensively, and this is probably partly because they conceded 9 in one game. They have the worst defensive record in the Premier League at time of recording, with 51 goals conceded. In terms of goals scored, 25, which is it's not great. It's not the worst. In terms of, there's a couple of teams on 20 goals at time of recording, so yeah, not brilliant. But in terms of moving this on kind of to the Villa side of things, it is one of those cliches that I often trot out, that it's not necessarily what Bournemouth are going to be doing that dictates how this game will turn out. It's what Villa team turn up, I think, because not realistically, in my esteemed opinion, positive Baz hat on.
Oh, God.
This Villa team is, if this Villa team turns up and plays to the best, or yes, let's say the best of its abilities, should win comfortably, right?
I thought so. The only thing that concerns me with the team is who plays centre mid, because John McGinn's been such a revelation on that right midfield position. I'd like to see somebody else play in the centre. The only two, though, really, that you can go for, Leander Dendoncker, and we're awaiting an Emery's press conference at time of recording. to see whether he's available, or Callum Chambers. And you sort of think you could put Callum Chambers in there and move Guinea back out onto the right, where he's been playing well. And that means having Buendia up front again with Watkins. That's going to be the main thing. I don't think it's enough to see us lose the game. I think we will win. It's just how comfortable we'll win.
No, in terms of that debate, I would play Chambers in central midfield along with Louise and move McGinn back to the right in terms of, again, no disrespect to Bournemouth, but in terms, ideally, would you have first choice Chambers playing in that role? Probably not. But in this stage of the season, for me, if Dendoncker is fit, and as you say, we're waiting outcome of press conference at time recording. Even if he is fit, I'd play Chambers. in all honesty, I think I have horror memory flashbacks of Stevenage Borough ingrained into my eyeballs. But I mean, ultimately, that depends on whether Emre considers that Chambers is in his plans moving forwards. The suggestion appears to be that he's not, but if you are going to make overtures to try and keep him, you'd think this is the type of game you'd have to be playing him in, really. And I unsurprisingly agree with McGinn in terms of his form of late has been in large part because of the change in position. Put him there. I mean, especially if the intention is to keep him as captain. You want your captain playing well. You want your captain, leading by example, and just put him in the best place to make that happen, which at the moment is the right wing. And then in terms of Buendia, we mentioned Bailey. Which one do you play up front? I'd agree with your suggestion of Buendia in this game, because I think in terms of Bournemouth, as you mentioned, they're going to be defensively disciplined. You think the game plan from Bournemouth isn't going to be go and attack Villa gung ho. I wouldn't have thought. It's going to be sit back, soak up the pressure, try and get the crowd in play, as in negatively turning on Villa. I think that's one of the interesting kind of balances of the Emre era. Is Emre's very much, we're a team who's going to play possession football and then tease the chance out from the opposition. Just keep doing what we're doing, and if that takes 85 minutes, then it takes 85 minutes. We're not going to bomb forward. Often Villa fans like to see their teams playing attacking football, even over you could say over the last 10, 15 years, we haven't had any attackers who are fit to do that. But in terms of that, well, I mean, in terms of when times were bad, I mean, in terms of we have had some good scorers, obviously, during that time. But that's going to be the dynamic that Bournemouth will look to play on. I mean, it's not rocket science going to Villa in terms of the crowd can turn. So try and bring that into play. But in terms of score predictions, I did boldly say 5 minutes ago Villa should win comfortably, or I supposed that. I do think Villa will win, but I think it's going to be 1-0, and I think it's going to be late. I think in terms of, I don't think we're going to steamroll the Bournemouth, but I do think we are going to have enough in the locker to get the win. How about you? Are you going to bring the positive goal parade out, or are you similarly thinking it's going to be a tight game?
I can't find the key for the lock for the positive goal parade. I put them away, didn't I, a little while ago. I similarly think that it will be a close game. I think it's going to take a while for us to really get used to this Emre system and to go hammering teams. And I don't think he's necessarily looking for that. He's looking for us to win and get clean sheets. Though I think Bournemouth will score. Dominic Solanke will score. And we'll get a 2-1 victory. And I think we're going to see John McGinn's first goal of the season. Could be an own goal, but no, we'll see his first goal of the season.
A Solanke shot that goes off his backside and then deflects in the goal.
You love it.
Well, yep. And speaking of things I do love, and that you love as well, our Twitter page.
Ice cream.
And ice cream, in terms of, have we ever had a poll on what's the favourite flavour of ice cream on our Twitter page? Maybe that's for the off season in terms of where
no debate.
Yeah.
No debate.
Strawberry, where
Yeah,
where we delve into the big issues of what's going on the field and off the field as well. On our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, we'll be seeking your views before, during, and after the game, no doubt, in respect of all things going on. You can continue to check us out on our audio providers: Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. We're on FanHub. If you've enjoyed watching us on our YouTube channel today and thought, I need to go back and get more of this viewing pleasure, our YouTube channel is there for you. We appreciate however you watch, interact, subscribe, like all of the content we put out there. Really do appreciate it. And before I pass you back over to my co-host for his final thoughts, thanks very much for listening, watching, and be with you again soon.
yeah. Cheers, Tar. Thank you very much for the listens, for the watches, for however you are interacting with us. Interact more, would be much appreciated. But regardless of what happens this weekend, Baz is on to a winner because he's backing all the teams.
Yep.
I am certainly hoping that there isn't a cherry on top this weekend. Not have my ice cream. You can get lost. I'm just going to stick to nice and simple vanilla and hope that it's an Aston Villa victory. He's Villa till he dies, and every other team in the bloody football history. I'm Villa till I die. Cheers, Star. Thank you very much. Up the Villa.